Yeah, so it sounds like he's trying to identify some Al Brooks price action patterns, specifically wedges. Yeah, so thankfully, Richard submitted some screenshots here, to kind of help illustrate a wedge, or an Al Brooks definition of a wedge. These definitely are not classical stock trading wedges. They're a little more subjective, but Al Brooks stuff is left open for a lot of interpretation. Let's just put it that way here. Yeah, so this is, I guess, so I can't answer this question, but it's at least good for, there's a bunch of new people in the room here. So it's good for you guys to kind of understand, some of the things that BloodHound is not going to do. Simply put, price patterns is not something that BloodHound's going to do. All right, BloodHound is not a price pattern finding indicator. Although, with the exception to that is that, people will ask how to find candlestick patterns. Say like a one bar pattern, a 2-bar candlestick pattern, and sometimes even on a rare occasion, a 3-bar candlestick pattern, right? So candlestick patterns are a lot different from broader termed price patterns, because with candlestick patterns, now of course this is a range chart, so let's switch over to a minute chart here. So with candlestick patterns, and I would suggest that really you guys use NinjaTrader's candlestick pattern indicator, right? Because the indicator has flexibility built into it, which you're not going to get that from BloodHound, right? So when you write a dedicated indicator, right, you can customize the code and the formula to build in flexibility. Like right here, a trend strength, right? So the indicator has a strength property built into it, which you can't do with BloodHound. BloodHound is not designed to have like a period setting or a strength setting. It's not a price pattern finding indicator. Just again, think of BloodHound as gluing your indicators together, but it's not an indicator to build other indicators. It just glues indicator conditions together. So BloodHound, as far as finding patterns, it could find limited candlestick patterns. And so any of the price patterns you might find on here are going to be really limited to like no more than 3 bars pretty much. Because once you get to that 3rd bar, the variability, of body sizes to body sizes and wicks to wicks and all that stuff, the variability just starts increasing exponentially the more bars you add to this. So that's why really the only candlestick patterns you're going to find are usually just 1 or 2 candlesticks, because you're only making like 4 comparisons. You're like comparing the high to the high or the open to the open. The number of comparisons are very limited, but once you add that 3rd one, then your number of comparisons start ramping up exponentially. Now, so that's candlestick to candlestick. That is, because the number of comparisons that you're doing is so limited, that is manageable to do within BloodHound, to a limited extent. But once you start branching across multiple bars, your variability, like I said, ramps up exponentially. And so in the particular case of finding a trend line like this or a wedge, this requires a custom indicator, because you first of all have to find out, okay, what's your anchor point? Which bar starts the pattern? So that's first, that right there is kind of like difficult enough to do that with code, right? So then once you find your anchor, you then have to find a second point, and all the bars in between, and go, okay, yeah, this actually looks like a good second point. And again, that requires a ton of code to be able to find that second anchor point. So once you have two anchor points, your starting anchor and a midpoint, then you have a projection line, which again requires math. You have to project this line. You have to calculate a slope and then start comparing, the bar highs or candles to that. And again, that's a very intensely involved mathematical formula to start doing stuff like this. Like right here, there's this big gap in between that requires a lot of complex code to determine, is this, gap in between acceptable or not? Especially, let's see here, where was it? Actually, I wanted to start with this one. So yeah, we can see that basically price touches about 3 spots. And look at this. These candles, the low breaks through the line and it's still acceptable. That is so subjective. So while you probably could code that subject nature into an indicator, again, that's complex coding to do that. And then going to this one, yeah, I wanted to use this one because this one actually has more high prices touching the line, so you're actually analyzing a lot more data points, right? So the data points, in other words, the number of the bars that are actually touching the line are changing all the time, which is not what BloodHound is for. That requires custom coding when you have all this variable subjective nature. Yeah, so like here really had 1, 2, 3, 3 bars touching and 4 bars touching actually. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you go this one, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, basically, yeah, you got 7 bars touching within here. So, and then you jump over to this next pattern, which is, look at the gap, right? Look at the number of bars between 0.1 and 0.2 and 0.3. You have this huge gap in between. Again, very subjective. It's going to require lines of code to be able to. That's why, if you guys ever notice, it's very difficult to find a price pattern indicator out there because they're very difficult to program. So, then looking at this other one, actually this one here, even though it's steeper, it's still about the same, right? You got a group of 2 and another one, with gaps in between. And it's kind of close to this one, right? You got a group of 2, gap in between. Of course, there is no touch on this last point. So, so again, this line was extended out to a bar that didn't even, where the endpoints didn't even touch it. So again, subjective nature there into what's defined as a wedge. Yeah, so just keep in mind, that BloodHound is only going to find the simplest of simple bar-to-bar patterns. It's not going to find, it's not going to bridge across multiple patterns. You need a customized indicator to do this, And think of a swing indicator, right? Think of a swing indicator. That's lines and lines and lines of code just to find a swing high and a swing low, something that seems to be very simple, but to convert that into computer language, requires a lot of flexibility, within the code. And that is just, not, BloodHound is not designed to find price patterns. So, all right. So anyways, yeah, that's a little explanation on that one there.